welcome back. We're here again with Father Edward Connolly, parish priest in the Diocese of Allentown, Pennsylvania. Welcome back, Father.
Thank you, Mr. Buono.
Today we're going to talk about the concept of family of origin, which is the term used in marriage preparation when they give you preparation in the areas of what you need to have covered, right, before your marriage takes place. And so family of origin is important, and it doesn't ring out like all the other subject matter. So I thought maybe we could talk about this a bit, and let's start with what does it mean, family of origin?
Family of origin refers to your mother and your father, basically. That's from whom you have come. And then beyond them, your 4 grandparents. You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great, goes back geometrically. And so we are all, every human being is the offspring of so many persons in the past. When you think of it.
Yeah. What does this have to do with these 2 people going into marriage?
Well, the human body, of course, is formed in the mother's fallopian tube, and it's a sperm and an ovum. This is sort of basic information, is it not? And we get our DNA from there. And the DNA that our mothers and our fathers give us is the DNA that they inherited from their parents and from their parents. So we are, without any question, we are the product of our ancestors, not simply physically, but also temperamentally. Temperament is sometimes defined as that part of our personality which we can't do anything about, which we simply inherit, whereas personality in the full sense is what we do with that temperament. But we do have a basic package. Sometimes we come across reports of, or even we might be personally experienced, personally acquainted with some child who, at the age of 4, can play the piano.
Yeah.
I saw a little boy on TV recently. He was no more than 5 or 6. He sat down and played the piano, just remarkable. Now I say, where did he get that? Did he decide to apply himself to it? No, it just comes to him,
Yeah, all us parents were like, we're putting our 5-year-olds at the piano and checking it out to see what he can do.
So we say, well, there's got to be something in the genes. There has to be something in the genes, and indeed there is. God bless the child, but he lucked out as far as piano playing is concerned, and I hope that in other areas of life he does as well.
Yeah. So you had once said to me that it's pretty interesting that on the wedding night you bring all these persons with you, right?
Indeed you do. There's the old joke, which is really not a joke, that there are 6 persons in every wedding bed: husband and his parents, wife and her parents. It's inevitable. And maybe the child that is conceived after a couple of years, you start to look and say, that child looks awfully much like, my father or my mother, meaning the child's grandparent, I remember being told when I was a little boy that I was a carbon copy of one of my mother's youngest brother. And since he lived in Germany and I had never met him at that point, I was anxious to see pictures of him, and I could see the resemblance. In fact, years later, I did get to meet him, and I looked at him, and I thought I was looking at, an older clone of mine. So there's no question about it. We are not simply in our physical appearance, but sometimes in our dispositions, our habits, our temperaments.
Yeah. Well, looking at the genders, the male and female, you could tell us more about this ancestry concept when it comes to the genes, the chromosomes, and how we can really tell a little bit more based on the XY factors.
Well, as we all know, a male has 2 different chromosomes, XY. We call them XY, meaning there are 2 different ones. That constitutes a male, whereas a female has 2 of the same, XX. So XX is female, XY is male. And it's obvious that every boy has his Y from his father. Why? Well, we can't get a Y from a woman, so the Y in me is from my father. But the Y that is in me from my father, where did my father get that? Well, he had to get that from his father, because his mother would not have the Y to transmit, you know. And you keep going back and you say, oh, there's a natural law basis for saying that it is appropriate that the name of the father should be continued in the family, by which I mean the surname. Yes. Your children, obviously, are known by your last name, not by your wife's maiden name.
Right.
And someone might say, oh, that's simply a conventional thing, you know, that's something that human beings decided on, you know, it's due to male dominance, you know, and we have to, maybe it would be better if people just would decide, you know, well, which name do you want to give? My name or your name? No, I think that way lies insanity. Giving the child the name of the father is based on genetics, when you get right down to it. Because I know where my Y chromosome comes from. I know without any doubt. It comes from my father, who got it from his father, who got it from his father, who got it from his father. My X chromosome, which I definitely got from my mother, I don't know if my mother got that X chromosome from her father or from her mother. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure where my X came from. It came from either my mother's father or my mother's mother, but I don't know which.
Okay.
And so my connection with my genetic connection, my chromosomal connection, I'm not talking about affection now, but my chromosomal or genetic connection is definite with my father's father, and so it is.
So how does this, can knowledge of this reality affect, I guess, the way two people go about approaching, I guess, dealing with each other in a relationship or going into marriage? I mean, it's very interesting to know those things, but how does that affect the individuals, or even if it's at a religious level? You know, what can we take from that as we go into the relationship?
I remember sitting down at the kitchen table recently with a young man with whom I had a very little acquaintance up to that point, and he was planning on marrying a young woman in my parish. And since I knew the young woman much longer than he did, and knew her family, I knew her parents, I even know a couple of her grandparents, he was interested in my telling him whatever I could about her family of origin. And he just wanted to know, because he didn't want to sign on the dotted line if he found that there was some sort of an anomaly in her background that he did not know about. So he was doing a sort of a discreet search as to, you know, whether she was a good prospective wife for him. In doing so, was he being paranoid or was he being wise? Well, I would not say he was being paranoid. I would say he was exhibiting a certain amount of wisdom. When, you know, the old classic picture is the young woman brings the young man home to meet her parents, and the parents sit down with the parents of the girl, sit down with the young man, and they say, well, young fellow, where are you from, you know, and who's your mom, who's your dad, who, you know, and they want to know a little bit about the background, to know what went into the basic, you know, mixture that produced him.
Yes.
We are definitely the children of our ancestors, and knowing something about the background of our prospective marriage partner can be useful.
Yeah, I often tell single people that in your process of dating and courtship, you really have to spend a lot of time seeing them, not just getting to know their parents or their families, but to see them around them, because you really tend to just kind of get back into the mold, as they say, you know, when
Right.
you know, when you're around them, and you can see evidence, all kinds of things around within a person after being around their families. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. If you think that your prospective husband is going to be a whole lot different with you from how he is with his mother and his sisters, you're probably very much mistaken. Marriage doesn't substantially change a person. It simply, produces a new environment in which he's going to be the same old person he always was. There was a priest who gave us a retreat in the seminary once, and he said something to us which lingers in my brain. I don't know if I'm allowed to use the expression SOB in this program. Are we able to do that? Or would that be too shocking?
You can say SOB.
I may say that, okay, sure. Fine. He said to us, seminarians, he said, gentlemen, you better get your acts together now in case they're not together, because he said ordination to the priesthood will not change your fundamental personality. He summed it up by saying, which of course brought the house down, he said, because if you're an SOB now, once you're ordained, you'll be an ordained SOB. So changing that to marriage, I would say much the same. If you are, we'll avoid that phrase now. If you are a unsatisfactory person, how's that? If you're an unsatisfactory person before you're married, after you're married, you'll be a married unsatisfactory person.
So really, the apple does not fall far from the tree.
That's true, right.
All right, let's take a moment now and see what our experts have to say on this topic of family of origin.
There's no question that a stable, well-organized, integrated family with religious values is, in general, the best place to get started. Many people don't have that. They may come from what was once a good background, but it may have blown up in a marriage, in a divorce. You have others that really didn't have that opportunity.
We all work off role models. We all have teachers, and the teacher of marriage is our parents, or the teachers of marriage is our uncles and aunts, or the teacher or friends of ours who from grade school, high school, or college that we acquire, and we visit their homes and we watch the interaction, although not obviously as authentic as it probably is, because they're clearly on their best behavior normally when we're around, and we start forming an idea of what marriage is about.
The greatest school that we'll ever go to is our home as little kids growing up. We learn all kinds of stuff. Kids are learning from the time they're born. That's really what a human being is. We are a learning organism. And what did they learn? They learn if daddy loves mommy. They learn how to treat, as they grow up, the boy learns how to treat women by watching the father talk to their mom. And the little girl knows about how she should be treated by boys by watching her daddy talk to her mom.
You just think you're marrying your wife or your husband, but no, you're marrying into a family. That doesn't mean they're going to be living with you, hopefully, or that even you'll see them that much, depending on geographically. See, the nice thing about, or not, as the case would be in this country, geographically, if you don't get along with the family, you can move 500 miles away, and the problem is less serious than it would be otherwise. Hopefully that's not the case. But you would hope that either both of you marrying, that you would love and grow to love and see those parents, in certain senses, your other parents, and vice versa.
Many men my own age and younger have been raised in families that had a lot of dysfunction. So when they see that modeled, they're afraid because they've seen their own parents in some dysfunctional relationship. So it becomes difficult to imagine themselves in that because they think it may end up the same way. Well, furthermore, they may be hurt from that dysfunction so much so that they don't know how to love properly.
Now, let's take it on a negative way. Let's suppose I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, okay, or you are, or anybody. What do we learn about love? Nothing. In an active alcoholic family, you learn about the manipulation of the enabler to try to control the drinking of the addict. Everything is phony. Everything is a manipulation. You learn how to be sarcastic, and you learn all this negative stuff. You learn not to trust anybody, because whatever the alcoholic says, he or she never does. So in these homes that can be just absolutely wonderful teaching places for children, because the home is the place in which we socialize the next generation.
We have to be realistic, and one of the things which obviously a couple should do over the period of courtship is to get to know each other as well as they can, which of course involves the reality of virtues, good points, and also faults, defects. We hope not vices, but there can be vices of the past that have been remedied. So yes, so happiness is what you're looking for in marriage, but a happiness in the context of who she is or he is, in the context of your family background, which is extremely important. All these series of movies, Meet the Parents, and all of these type of things, making reference to contemporary culture. But to realize that your spouse, male or female as the case may be, is in many ways, we would not say a DNA replica of their parents, in a certain sense, yes, but they probably have a lot of the virtues and also some of the less happy points of defects or faults. And you better get to know that, because over time your wife or your husband is going to manifest those good points and also some of those that are less pleasant.
Now, because I worked with very poor people all my life, and I still am in that work, I'm the chairman of Good Counsel Homes, which has just provided, since we began, 500,000 nights of shelter to homeless mothers and their babies. Does this mean that the future of those girls is hopeless? No, it does not mean that. And at times, with the grace of God and some real conversion, it does work out. A good family is a good start. But if it's lacking divine grace and hard work on the part of the couple working together, can overcome the obstacles.
I even go back a couple generations. You should know what's in the family. Even some of the skeletons, if there are skeletons, there need not be necessarily, but the human beings. Everyone's got the person made this mistake or did that, or one should also see if there's a tendency toward addiction, or who knows what, any number of things. Just nothing should shock us. We're all human beings, but realize I'm marrying into this family, and there are traits there that can be passed down. That doesn't violate free will. Ultimately, we are responsible for our actions, not because our uncle or our grandparent did this, that, or the other. Anyway, I think it's very important. It's fun too.
So there's a lot of men, women coming from backgrounds where they're inheriting from their parents genetics, genes, but also patterns of behavior, just things that they grew up with. So they take them into their relationships, and maybe they cause or are the recipients of hurts, or they just bring the dysfunction of their family life into their relationship. How do they deal with that, or how does the other person deal with that? I mean, should a person be looking at another person so clearly? In other words, I feel that there is something to family of origin, but maybe there has to also be something else there that could help them have hope that the relationship can still be possible.
Definitely. We are not, determinists. A determinist is a person who adopts the philosophy that everything is programmed. From the moment we are conceived in our mother's wombs, or from the moment we come out, everything is set. Change is possible, and for a person who surrenders himself to God's grace, a change is not merely possible, but it is very likely. In many ways, we want to change. God knows you have changed over the years. God knows I have changed over the years. There are some things that I have said and done in the past. I look back and say, gee, I wish I had not said that. I wish I had not done that. I won't do that again. I won't say that again. Perhaps same with you, I guess. So we're not confined. There are instances in the Bible of people who have most unsatisfactory parents who turn out to be splendid people. But there's also the opposite example. People who have splendid parents who turned out to be most unsatisfactory persons. I'm thinking of the long list of the kings of Judah in the Bible. You have some strange happenings there where you have this one king who's a terrible, terrible king, and then he has a son who turns out to be a real sweetheart, you know. But then that son produces a son who is not. And you say, what went wrong here? What's the difference? Maybe the message is that not everything is genetics and chromosomes, you know, that there is cooperation with God's grace or non-cooperation.
I always found it fascinating that just in the beginning, Adam and Eve, and you have Cain and Abel, and just the total differences there. It's amazing, and that's just one line down. You know?
Yeah, where opportunity meets preparation. Who said that? Newt Rockney, I think, said that. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation. You ever hear that?
No, I've never heard that.
Yeah. So there's two people can have the same opportunities, but one is prepared and one is not prepared, and so the preparation makes the difference between the success and the failure. Two people can make two different things out of the same opportunity.
Yeah, there's a lot on the market now of there are a lot of books written by professionals, what have you, that are giving pretty strong advice about steering clear of people who have had whatever issues in their past. Let's just say, you know, even some saying just people who come from divorce, you know, stay clear of them. And then there's analysis, a lot of analysis on temperaments, you know, matching up temperaments, and of course there's computers and online dating that are matching people up based on these criteria and statistics. I mean, what do you have to say about all these type of approaches from the experts in computers and technology?
Well, is it more likely that a person whose parents are divorced will himself or herself get divorced? I've read statistics that say, yes, that is more likely. But now, is that because they have been determined, it's programmed into them, so much so that they can't break the program? I would say no. I would say, ideally speaking, if you could marry someone who comes from a stable parental background, that's a plus, but it's not a guarantee. I would recommend to engage couples or couples who are moving toward engagement that they do an honest critique with one another of their own parental upbringing. And we must always be gentle, respectful in regard to our own parents. And it's a touchy thing to talk about your parents because we don't want to criticize them. But in some areas we could analyze, you know, and say, you know, my parents did very well in this regard. I'm going to imitate that. I'm going to follow that pattern. Right. In this regard, with all due respect, my parents did not do well, and I don't want to follow that pattern. So we are able, because we are human beings, we are able to transcend our origins.
Yeah, and I agree completely. And ultimately, God's grace, followed by or in conjunction with a determined will to live life of Christ, can do amazing things. I mean, I come from a dysfunctional background in those respects, whatever, divorce or what have you, and I married a woman who we have identical temperaments, and it gets pretty adventuresome, you know, in the house. You know, the fights are pretty intense, and I mean, we have to do a lot of work in it. I mean, but we have an incredible relationship, and a lot of it has been centered on identifying these past things. And I think that is a very, very important thing to do, is identify these tendencies that you have that you can identify that have something to do with the past in your upbringing, and then put them on the table, and you pray and you work hard, and you could be very, very happy. So far so good with us. We have our moments, but based on the books and the computers, we should not be married, and we should not be with each other. So it does happen that you can have happiness, but love is a mystery. So the family of origin is very helpful, but ultimately the movements of love are very mysterious, and you never know who one is going to be attracted to, right? And I'm sure as a priest, it's part of your role that you can never really judge that completely because of the right each person has to marry, and you do your best to see the compatibilities or the red flags, and then you have to say, okay, that's all I can do.
So true, yeah. A human being fundamentally has a right to marry, and we must not be so judgmental as to say, oh no, you may not marry that person. If the two persons are free to marry and of age, then we can say, well, they have a right to marry one another. So there have been times perhaps when I would have liked to have said to somebody, I don't really think you're meant for one another, but I never go that far. That would be beyond my reach.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you thought it, and I'm sure you've probably said some kind of hints. I'm sure just be careful about this, that, or the other thing, just out of fatherly role. But yeah, because of that respect of their right to marry, it gets very hard, and I think this is where marriage preparation at any level is very difficult, because sometimes, actually a lot of times, the people from without have the vision. They can make these predictions because of what they're observing in the relationship. But when you're in the middle of your love, your emotions, your feelings, the romance, and all those things can blind you. And so it would be wise for couples to seek the advice of those who know them best, don't you think?
Oh yes. We should not enter into marriage blind. Some people enter into marriage so casually, and they're not really prepared for it. They don't really talk to others about it. But it's so important to get good premarital counseling with your parish priest. That's part of his duty. And most dioceses today, in fact, every diocese that I know of, they have a program, a pre-Cana program. And so the Catholic Church has become more and more aware of its duty to help couples to prepare. I remember years ago, I was on an Engaged Encounter weekend. There was a couple who came to see me to speak about something in particular. And after I spoke with them, it sort of slipped out of my mind. I did not anticipate any further contact with them. And I remember once going in a restaurant and sat down at the table. A young woman came over to me and said, hello, and she addressed me by name, and I smiled. I said, hi. I said, gee, I'm sorry. I said, your face is familiar, but I don't remember your name. And she reminded me that I had spoken with her and with her fiance at the Engaged Encounter weekend. And she said, I just want to thank you because you did me a very great favor. I said, did I? And she said, yes, we did not get married. We broke up. I said, oh. And I wasn't sure at that point whether I was supposed to feel guilty or apologize or something. She said, it was the best decision I ever made in my life. She said, and you helped me to make it. I said, oh, you're most welcome,
That is ironic, isn't it?
It is. I look back to it as, well, gee, I did something good with my life. It's like I was a catalyst to prevent one unhappy union.
Exactly.
But many times people they drift along. And deep down, they're looking for somebody to tell me, oh, stop what you're doing, In fact, that particular story that I told you it's true, but I could multiply that perhaps with other stories, which I won't bore you with now.
Yeah.
But
well, we had that happen here in the Diocese of Atlanta, when using our Road to Cana programs for their young adult ministry, and there was a couple in it, and they came up to me the one time I was there facilitating one of their sessions, and well, I should say I got emailed from them later after the program saying, and the woman said that we broke up and they're at peace and they're wonderful, and that's all part of it too, is determining if you're not meant to be married. So. Well, that's all the time we have. Certainly it is the role of Road to Cana to prepare even single people who haven't met the right person yet to understand what it is that they should know as they approach their relationships and, of course, future marriage. So it's wise to even approach your parish priest, or your diocese about the marriage preparation programs, so you can learn what it is that the church is looking for in a couple, so that you're more prepared for your relationships that you're about to enter into. And you can go to our website, www.roadtocana.com, where there are more resources, and we list things that have to do with where you could look for this type of information, as well as all these programs are available. And please help those that you know who are preparing for the dating process or for marriage, and there's a lot of work to do. And remember, while you're on this road, to remember that God has a plan for you and to trust it, and keep Christ's peace with you always.
On the road.